Hey, what's going on, guys? So, as I'm recording this, I've been doing my Batman Arkham Trilogy Let's Play series, and naturally, talking about Batman, I found myself on the topic of The Dark Knight Returns. And I'm not sure if this is considered a hot take these days or not, but I absolutely love Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and Lynn Varley's Dark Knight Returns. To this day, I still see it as a masterpiece, despite the contemporary and popular perspective to have on it within the comic book community, which is to say that it's the worst thing that ever happened to the character, and anybody who likes it for any reason is a fascist, or a white supremacist, or an Uncle Tom, or a fake Batman fan. And despite my usual sarcasm, I'm actually not being sarcastic or purposely hyperbolic when I say those things. I've actually had conversations with people who've told me that The Dark Knight Returns is an abomination, and that people who like it or identify with it are racists, or they don't understand the character of Batman, or that they don't properly appreciate the character of Batman, and just crap like that. And that The Dark Knight Returns shouldn't be anyone's first Batman comic because it's a deconstruction that doesn't understand the character. And I've already given my piece on The Dark Knight Returns and its impact on the character of Batman. I'm definitely in the camp that thinks, in the more broad, general sense, The Dark Knight Returns definitely broke the character of Batman. But I also feel like it's of no fault of Frank Miller, Lynn Varley, or Klaus Janson. I think the major problem that The Dark Knight Returns has, and has had on the legacy of the character of Batman, is that there was an entire generation throughout the 80s and the 90s that grew up with The Dark Knight Returns, and it blew their minds as children and teenagers, but in that admiration, they kind of missed the point of what Frank Miller was going for when he wrote that comic. The Dark Knight Returns was never intended to be or lay the groundwork for the standard Batman story. Hell, I wouldn't even go as far to say that it's a deconstruction of Batman, like most people like to refer to it as, because it's not really deconstructing Batman or superheroes in the same way that Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons were doing with Watchmen and Miracle Man and other comics like that in the 80s. Dark Knight Returns is a social-political satire of a post-Vietnam, post-Nixon, Reagan-era United States of America. It's a commentary on the collapse of the American ideal, or much rather, the illusion of the American ideal and the American dream, and the nihilism that is born out of that more cynical worldview that we as a culture adopted due to the oppressive nature of everything that was going on in the country and really in the world at the time. And Miller was using American superheroes as a storytelling device to get those ideas across. But again, that nuance was just completely lost on a lot of 13, 14, 15-year-olds at the time, because of course it would be. They were kids living in a pre-information overload kind of age. It's the same reason why there's so many people from that time period who look at Ghostbusters, for example, and they think it's good because, the movie's about busting ghosts and fighting ghosts, and busting makes me feel good. When actually, it's about cutthroat capitalism and how that will directly lead us into the apocalypse. But yeah, there's an entire generation that grew up reading Dark Knight Returns thinking, fuck yeah, this is what Batman stories are all supposed to be about, and, Batman's hardcore because he can beat up Superman, and Batman's gnarly and fucked up, and he's supposed to be ultra gritty and violent. And, eventually, that generation gets to the point when they're in charge of the character and his direction. And that's how we ended up with the Batman stories that we've been getting, be it comics, movies, video games, and everything else in between for the past 35 plus years. And somewhat recently, there's been this massive resistance against Dark Knight Returns and the Frank Miller influence on Batman's legacy. And all things being fair, I completely understand and sympathize with that pushback. Again, I don't think Miller ever intended for The Dark Knight Returns to be the blueprint for the standard of Batman storytelling moving forward, because that comic is an intentional perversion of what Batman is supposed to be. And it's not just Batman, but the DC universe as a whole. So again, I completely understand where the irreverence comes from, but where they lose me is when they start to say things like, well, The Dark Knight Returns was actually never good in the first place. And like, it's overrated, and Denny O'Neil's Batman comics were like so much better. Which, oh, okay, okay. I'm sure you guys have seen this meme. The Virgin Dark Knight Returns versus the Chad Denny O'Neil Batman. It's a funny meme, but I mean, people take that perspective 100% seriously though, and I don't understand the comparison. Denny O'Neil, when he was writing Batman, he was approaching the character with the intention of telling crime dramas and political thrillers within the context of a monthly comic format. And Frank Miller approached The Dark Knight Returns with the intention of crafting a 4-issue operatic melodrama in which a 50-year-old Bruce Wayne experiences a midlife crisis while Ronald Reagan is inching America to the brink of World War III, with Bruce's relapse into being Batman after being retired for 10 plus years nearly sets the stage for a nuclear apocalypse. Those are very incomparable things, in my opinion. Unless, of course, the comparison being made is nothing more than the superficial fact that both writers were telling stories with Batman. And in that case, I think that perspective is, with all due respect, mind you, pretty fucking retarded. And is a massive disservice to both interpretations of the character. Anyways, despite everything that I just said, I still really enjoy The Dark Knight Returns. I still see it as a masterpiece in political commentary and comic book storytelling. It just kind of sucks that, like, there's an entire generation that endlessly simped for that comic based on its most superficial attributes. And now there's this new generation of Batman fans who resent the comic solely because the previous generation kind of ruined the character of Batman because they didn't pick up on what Frank Miller was putting down. It's very unfortunate, but, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. Granted, is The Dark Knight Returns the greatest Batman story ever told? I don't know. I mean, that kind of assessment is wholly subjective. I can certainly say that there are Batman stories that I like more than The Dark Knight Returns, and there are Batman stories that I much prefer to read over The Dark Knight Returns, depending on my mood. But yeah, I don't know. I think that whole perspective of, like, The Dark Knight Returns, it was never good. It's just very hipstery, and it's kind of annoying. It's almost as bad and reductive as the Bruce Wayne is just a rich guy who beats up poor people, and, you know, just dumb arguments like that I hear on the internet and shit like that. But again, those are my thoughts. But what about you? What do you think about The Dark Knight Returns? I feel like that's a bit of a loaded question after this video, but I'm curious. What are your thoughts regarding my thoughts on The Dark Knight Returns? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel. And if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I am the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos, adios. Charged up.